Okay, so this is the third unit in the strands of video tutorials on finding and fixing bugs in the Level 2 Coding and Data Analysis topic. So in this video, I'm going to go and walk you through a process of debugging and fixing up some deliberately badly written code. So debugging really is just a very systematic process of a step-by-step going through the code and sorting out what's going wrong. And I'm going to show you here some of the strategies you can use to go and debug code. And then as part of that, that will hopefully also show you some of the strategies you should adopt when writing code to make sure that you don't introduce more bugs than is absolutely necessary. So we'll go over to the notebook for this video tutorial. So you'll be able to download this notebook off Minerva as well if you want to follow along there. And I'll also link in the various versions of the files that we're talking about here. So in Unit 1 of the debugging series, I introduced the idea of 3 different types of bugs that we have to deal with. So the first of these, in the simplest effects, is the syntax error. So a syntax error is simply something that stops your code from running at all. That can be simply mistyping things, it can be forgotten punctuation or incorrect punctuation, or it can be things like indentation being wrong in your code. Generally speaking, syntax errors are relatively easy to find and most of the time are not too difficult to correct. Then there are identifier errors. And again, this can simply be mistyping a variable name or mistyping a function name. It can also be where you've forgotten to import something that you then later rely on in your code. But there are also some examples where it can be a bit more subtle, where you accidentally redefine a name in a way that you weren't expecting. And I'm going to show you some examples of how that can happen in really not very obvious ways at all. And then the final type of error, and the hardest one to track out, is the logic error. And these are cases where your code runs, but it simply doesn't do the right thing. And in that case, there's an actual error in the way you've thought about how the code should work, or you haven't thought about a particular edge case. And these really require you to have a very good understanding of what each part of your code is trying to do and what it might go and fail to get right. So the strategies for dealing with these 3 types of bugs can differ quite a lot. Okay, so this is the code that we're going to go and work with. It's deliberately badly written. It does all kinds of things that are just evil. And I'm going to talk you through how we tidy it up and bring it into a better state as we go along. Okay, so our first thing we're going to go and do is go and look to try and correct all the syntax errors. And one of the things I really want to try and persuade you of is that if you code using an IDE, like Spider, that's the one that I'll be using in the classes because it's the one that's built, that comes with Anaconda, then it can take a lot of the work, do a lot of the work for you and help figure out what's going on. If, of course, you're used already to using another IDE, that's fine. Don't change what you're using. But if all you've done is code in notebooks, then hopefully by the end of this course, you'll understand why for longer programs, more complicated programs, using something like Spider is going to be an awful lot easier. Now, a lot of the problems in this code we're getting with is it was originally written for Python version 2, which we haven't used for about 10 years, and now we're all coding in Python 3, and there are some incompatibilities between the 2 versions that result in some bugs. So specifically, the things that tend to cause problems is print. So in Python 3 that you've been taught, print is a function. That means whatever you want to go and print is an argument to the function, and that means that it goes in parentheses after print. In the old versions of Python, print was a statement, which meant you didn't need the brackets around it. Now, this really comes up if you end up working with some very old code and trying to convert it into more modern, into Python 3. But it's one thing to be aware of, particularly if you end up looking at old answers on the internet for things. Another example of something that has changed is Python 2 has a function called raw input, which is now exactly what Python 3 does with its input function. So we just need to rename raw input back to input to make it to work. And then there are going to be some other issues for us to go and fix in this code. And we're going to go through all of this. And the thing I want to get across here is that it's really important that you try and get rid of these syntax errors before you try and do anything else on the code. So at this point, let's go over to the actual code in the IDE. So here is the code we were looking at, and in a modern IDE it's very good at spotting where it thinks there are errors. So down the margin here you will see that there are some things which are highlighted with orange exclamation marks. Those are a variety of warnings. Some of them are about just that I haven't formatted this very nicely. Some of them are the things that are a more serious problem. And then there's the red cross here, and that's telling us there's an actual problem on this line. And if we hover over it, it even goes and tells us what it thinks that problem is. And in this case, it's saying there's missing parentheses to call a print. Did we mean to put the parentheses in there? And the answer is yes, we did. Because again, as I said, this was code that was originally written for an old version of Python when you didn't need to put parentheses because print was a statement. Now it's a function, so now we have to put parentheses around it. So what I'll do is I'll just highlight the thing that needs to be printed, and then as a nice shortcut and again, most IDEs do this, I can just press the open brackets and it automatically adds a closed bracket after it for me. I can just lose the space. So now we can come on, and you see it's removed the red cross, and now it's come on and it says, okay, we've got a red cross down here, and this is saying it's expected a colon. And this is because at the end of an if statement you have if whatever condition and then a colon. And that is part of a broader way about how Python works, is that when you have a Python construct, which means you're going to have a bunch of lines that then should be treated as a block of lines to run under some condition or inside a loop, then they're indented in by typically 4 spaces. And the line before you do the indenting always has a colon at the end of it. So no matter what, you always have a colon before you start indenting lines by an extra amount. So that if then should have a colon there. Okay, so that's removed the red cross from that line, but now it's just jumped down 2 lines. And if we hover on that line, it tells us that this is missing the parentheses, so that's our same problem again. So let's just put the parentheses around. That fixes that one, and now the error jumps down to the next line, and it tells us we have an unexpected indent. Now, an unexpected indent means that Python has decided that 2 lines that should have the same number of spaces before them have a different number of spaces. And the reason you can get that might be that there's a colon missing. It could be that you've just mistyped the number of spaces. It can be more subtle things. If you don't use an editor that is an IDE that's Python aware, then you can get confusions between tab characters and spaces that can cause real problems. In this case, this is another nice example of actually the error might not be on the line that the IDE or the Python says it is. So it's flagged up this line with the continue as being an error. But if you actually look at it, the continue is lined up with this vertical line, is lined up with these other lines below it. So in fact, the continue is in the right level of indent. It's the line above that is wrong. So in general, if you find Python is telling you there's a problem with a particular line, if you really can't see what is wrong with the line it's telling you about, maybe it's the line above that's the problem. So in this case, I just put an extra space in to make the print line up with the continue, and now you see it's moved on, and it says my next error is down here, and it's another missing parentheses again. So I'll fix that. That sorted that out. And then it's going to have another problem. One of the things you'll see here is that it's not yet flagged it as a syntax error, but actually it is a syntax error. And if I just hover over this warning here, it's saying that raw input may be undefined or defined from somewhere that it shouldn't be, defined from the start. So we'll come back, and as we fix some of the other problems, we'll suddenly see that we get another red cross appearing on this line down here, and we'll explain what the problem is as we get there. So this code, we've now fixed the things that were basic syntax errors. It's still not going to work right, it's still not going to run properly, and it's still doing some things which are really quite evil. So let's carry on with trying to analyse this code.